Thank you so much for coming tonight, Naddav. I'm really fascinated by this subject. Obviously, it's sort of every day we're reading more and more about the hacks that are happening and huge companies and organisations, systems going down. So obviously you're at the forefront of this, having to consult in this area. What led you to get involved into this? What is your passion about this area?
Thanks. I think I've just always had a passion for investigating and finding out what's going on. And, my area of expertise happened to be in finance and accounting. And so through forensic accounting, I sort of fell into this space. Being in the Coast Guard under the Department of Homeland Security, that department initiates a lot of the government's efforts to combat cybercrime, and so just I'm inundated with information on this stuff. And then also just a friend invited me to the Secret Service Electronic Crimes Task Force, and working with the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners, just more and more you start seeing this integrating with all different kinds of crime. And so even though at one conference, there was a gentleman from the FBI there. We're all fraud examiners. We're just trying to examine fraud and stop people from stealing other people's money. But then a gentleman from the FBI who was in charge of the cybercrime unit came to speak, and I really started to understand that cyber has everything to do with a lot of the crime that we're seeing. Mm-hmm. And even though, generally speaking, crime isn't changing, at the end of the day, there's still one person taking money from another person. Cyber has really enabled these criminal networks to operate all over the world much more quickly, much more efficiently. And I think for a lot of people, it's really scary because it's no longer you're face to face with a criminal. Now it's, while you're watching TV, while you're sleeping, someone's cleaning out your bank account. Mm-hmm. And so I think that that's a fascinating field. It's very, very fast growing. There's a lot of changes happening very quickly. And I think over the next couple of years, we're going to see a lot of new regulations and a lot of new industry standards to help address it.
And so what area do you like to focus on personally yourself? Like what do you feel most passionate about?
Recently, I've really been getting interested in anti-money laundering and the terrorist financing. And I think that especially now with FinTech, it's becoming a lot easier to move money around a lot quicker. And there are exactly, especially with Bitcoin and with the cryptocurrencies, that really they're trying to provide a service, which is anonymity, which is great for a lot of law-abiding citizens, but it's also great for terrorists and human traffickers and other criminals that want to move money around without being detected by the government.
So where do you think it's all going to go in the future? I mean, obviously we all just have our individual visions of what we hope's going to happen and what are the possibilities that could happen. Could you share your perspective?
Absolutely. I think it's going to take a while for the government to not react, but catch up with their regulations. And I think, this technology is the future. I think blockchain is a tremendous technology, and it's really going to be involved in not just finance, but a lot of different things, and how businesses are run and record collecting and record keeping. I really think what's going to happen is it's going to take a lot of consumers to learn about the new world that we're in and to be trained on conducting themselves safely. I think over the last couple of decades, families have changed their security postures in terms of children don't play out in the street as much as they used to. As more and more cars as more and more families had cars, people started wearing seatbelts more often. So I think we're going to see a similar thing in cyberspace, where people are going to start using different passwords for different websites. People will start using two-factor authentication, and it's just going to be a matter of consumers catching up to best practices.
I know a few years ago I started using a VPN and trying to use a bit of encryption, and we do we cover a conference called Silicon Valley Human Rights Conference. Every 2 years they have a 3-day conference. And all those lectures and talks there certainly alert you as to not just security from the bad guys, but from being snooped upon and losing your own privacy, which is what they would be more focused on, people's human rights, really. So, yes, and yet, a few years before that, I would never have thought of having a VPN or, doing some of the things that I do now to protect myself. So it's interesting how things are moving along, right?
Exactly.
Thank you so much for coming. I think it's going to be a really interesting discussion, and it's certainly timely and important.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for having me. I'm happy to be here.